We're going to go ahead and start the City Council meeting for January 25th. If everybody would please stand for the invocation and the pledge. Mr. Campbell, if you will, lead us in the invocation.
Father God, we thank you for this day. God, we thank you how you continue to bless us and keep us. God, we don't take for granted that we have another day, and we thank you, God, for allowing us to be here one more time. We ask you to please bless this council. Be with all of our officers, God. We have new officers this year who are leading our city. Be with them, equip them for what they need. Give them the knowledge, the wisdom that they need to be leaders of our city. Help them to understand that and help us to understand also, Lord, that they're not perfect. They're still human. They make mistakes, but God, we all want to work together. As we work together, this will be a great community, a strong community, not only for us, but for our kids, for persons who's coming to our community, and also to watch our community grow in the right way. So God, we ask you and continue to ask you to bless this day. God, we ask a special prayer for Dr. Gutman's family and be with them. We thank you, God, for his life and how he has blessed this community for a long time. So be with him, strengthen him. We thank you, God, for having persons like that in our community who don't think it robbery to give back to our community. So bless him and bless his family. We pray their strength and pray their I guess, ongoing encouragement to go through this, because it's tough when you lose a father, a husband, a brother, a grandparent. It's just tough when you go through that. So be with them and that family and continue to bless our community to be what you will have it to be. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Councilperson White.
Present.
Councilperson Yon.
Present.
Councilperson Maples.
Here.
Councilperson Gill.
Here.
Council President Owen.
Here.
Councilperson Hawkins.
Here.
Councilperson Webb.
Present.
Councilperson Samuel.
Here.
Let the record reflect 8 council members present and councilpersons Estavny absent.
Minutes to be approved with minutes from the January 4th, 2016 meeting. If there are no edits or additions, I'd take a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion.
Sorry.
And I'll second. Motion and a second. Anything further? Hearing nothing. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Ayes have it. Approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second?
I need to make a motion to adjust the agenda to add my appointment to the Drainage Board.
We can take care of that in your comments.
Council.
Yep. If there's nothing else, there's a motion and a second to approve as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Claims. My claims.
Requesting approval of claims for $1,600,332.25. If there's any questions.
I did have a question. On page 1, there is a line for shredding for the city court. And I didn't know, does the 2016 budget reflect?
No. That was a bill from last year, so we encumbered it,
Okay,
the appropriation over.
okay. So,
There are a few other bills that just recently came in this week, and we're going to try to get them to waive those fees.
okay.
Is one of those from the street department? I sent you an email about a question that there was some funds that appropriated in 2015, and they said if we have to...
If we have a bill from December, then we can encumber it over
Okay,
from,
great.
yes.
I had another question, if that's okay.
Sure.
Page 6, top of the page under vehicle maintenance, transfer out for $250,000. Is that for fuel? Is it?
Yes, that goes to their non-reverting fuel
Thank you.
fund.
And then page 15, second line down under edit, the lease payment for almost $1,200. Is that 2 months?
It has
15,
The Ally?
Yeah.
I can look into it.
Okay, okay, it looks like it'll be about 2 months, because if it's for 1 month, then we won't have enough in that line item.
Right.
That's all I have.
Is there anything further? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion and a second to approve is presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
Report of the clerk.
Couple of things. We've been, as you can see, going through some renovations here in the council chambers, and they will be cleaning the carpet probably next Friday, where they're going to try cleaning the carpet and see how it does before purchasing new. And we've been working on the sound system. Patsy, myself, and Matt have been down here, and we've moved the camera back, and we've worked on the speakers in the back. So can you all hear pretty well back there? So we're working on getting the system together.
Thank you.
Can I ask her, Ms. Coleman, a question?
Sure.
I noticed, because I sit down there in drainage, and I know that Les has brought it up, several of those chairs that our attorneys sit in, and I don't know how those chairs are over there, but they are literally falling apart. Are they going to be replaced?
Yes. I've talked with Larry Wallace, Building Authority, and they are going, matter of fact, we talked about the other day, and he is getting a hold of the gentleman to bring in new chairs.
There's nothing further.
No, sir.
We'll move on. Heather Metcalf, 2016 OR1, an ordinance transferring funds within the same department. Passed on the first reading, and I don't believe there's been any changes. Is that correct?
No, there are no changes.
Motion to approve on second and third reading.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to pass on the second and third reading. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes.
Thank you.
New business. Wendy Chester and Matt Hall, from One Southern Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the City Council. It's nice to see, I guess I can still say Happy New Year, since I don't think I've seen most of you for this calendar year, although the first month is almost over. And for those that are newly elected City Council members, nice to see you. Many of you, nice to see you again. And for those I haven't met yet, we look forward to working with you. Matt Hall is playing Vanna White and handing out the materials. What we would like to do is continue the tradition of reporting to the Jeffersonville City Council on the economic development activities of the previous year. For those of you that are new, the City of Jeffersonville provides funding to One Southern Indiana for our economic development efforts. We have 3 functions at One Southern Indiana. We are the Chamber of Commerce organization for Clark and Floyd counties, where we have over 1,050 business members that we are working on behalf of. We provide some advocacy at the state level mostly for programs and projects that would benefit Southern Indiana. But what we're here to talk about tonight is the economic growth opportunities that exist in the area. Clark County itself has been a hotbed of economic activity over the past 2.5 years. We're very pleased to be a part of that, and we're also pleased to report that a lot of that benefit has landed in the city of Jeffersonville. So with no further ado, I'll let Mr. Hall, who folks around the state commonly refer to as the Dick Clark of economic development. He's been doing this for a number of years. I'll let him tell you the number. But folks recognize that Matt has been doing this and is pretty well respected in all circles. So, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Thank you all. You have 2 reports in front of you. I'm really going to focus on the top report that says a partnership for progress. And this is sort of a review of the return on investment that we've gotten through our economic development efforts. Now, I know we're short on time, so I'll go through this fairly quickly. The first page 2 of that report shows, it says getting results. Am I too loud? Shows the number of projects that we have brought to fruition in Clark and Floyd counties. You'll see there are 132 of those projects. 27 of those are new companies to our area for the first time, and 105 of those are the expansions of existing businesses. And if you look at the chart, the bar chart below that, that shows you how many of those projects are in Jeffersonville and the other communities in Clark and Floyd counties. Going ahead to page 3, we look at the new jobs that are being created by these 132 projects, and you'll see there are 10,682 commitments for jobs in Clark and Floyd counties, and there's a breakout of how those break out into new jobs and existing companies. And again, there's a bar chart at the bottom that shows you, am I too loud?
We have one online.
That shows how many of those new jobs are committed for the city of Jeffersonville.
She's going to put this on the overhead so the people can see.
Oh, okay.
it, So
All right.
just hang on.
I'm getting ready to go. 4.
That's interesting.
So now we're going to skip ahead to page 3, which talks, page 4, which talks about the new payroll being created by those 10,000 plus new jobs. And you can see, and this isn't, well, you can't see, it's a little blurry, but the number there for an annual number on that top chart is $379 million that are being generated annually in new payroll in Clark and Floyd counties. The bottom chart again is showing how much of that payroll are tied to jobs within the city of Jeffersonville. So there's about $280 million of that that's being generated within the city of Jeffersonville. Page 5, the next page, shows what the new capital is being expended by these 132 projects. And you'll see there is over $910 million in new capital being invested by these projects. And again, if you see the bottom chart, it shows you how much of that capital is actually being invested within the city of Jeffersonville. So if we go to page 6, this is the first of 2 really very simple calculations. We took every dollar that the city of Jeffersonville has invested in One Southern Indiana's economic development program, and we divided that by the number of new taxable capital, that number I showed you earlier. And you'll see that that is a return for each dollar of $3,186.82. So in other words, for every dollar that's been invested in economic development, these 132 projects have generated over $3,000 in new capital. Page 7, again, that same figure. If we divide that payroll number, that annual payroll number I talked about a minute ago, you're looking at a return of $1,230.35 for each dollar that has been invested in our program by the city of Jeffersonville. So the next page talks about our business retention and expansion work. You'll notice that we have made over 2,123 visits to existing businesses where we talk about everything from what impediments they have to doing business, do they have any plans to expand or grow, or is there any risk of us losing that company, and how can we make sure that we keep them here. The bottom chart will show you, we looked at projects by location, so these are projects where they were generated from, and you'll notice that we've had 626 projects that were generated outside of Clark and Floyd County, so these are businesses outside of our area that are looking in our area. And then 246 of those projects were generated by existing businesses in Clark and Floyd counties. So those are the numbers. They're not real exciting, but they are for me because I'm kind of geeky that way. But the next page talks about our new business attraction efforts. And one of the roles that we play at One Southern Indiana is we submit projects for our sites and buildings for companies that are looking really worldwide for where they're going to site these projects. Jeffersonville, obviously, and River Ridge receive a lot of submissions. We also host companies in our area to sort of sell our area to businesses outside. And we do a lot of work with River Ridge and also property list management. So we have a free listing, if you will, of available sites and buildings that we maintain that companies and site location consultants can look at to see what's available in our area. So page 10, the next page, talks about our domestic and international marketing. And there's a long list there going all the way back to 2008. It's just a sampling of the programs or the summits and initiatives that we have done both domestically and abroad to market Southern Indiana to the world, really. We've gotten projects out of those visits. I can tell you we've been to Japan and we've secured projects for Idemitsu Lubricants in Jeffersonville, and also the American Fuji Seal project in Jeffersonville, direct results of us visiting those companies in Japan. We have an upcoming trip to Germany, to Hannover Messe, where it's the largest industrial fair in the world. The United States is the partner country this year for that event, so we are looking forward to taking Southern Indiana's message to those folks there. Page 11, the next page, is sort of a highlight of our business retention and expansion efforts, and there are some examples of recent companies that we've worked with to help them expand or grow in our area. And also we serve as sort of a business concierge to these folks to, again, address any issues they may have or challenges they may have, or if we feel like any of them are at risk of being acquired or merged or moved, we certainly try to step in as soon as we can to save those companies. And the next page is our advocacy for commerce, and these are things that generate out of our advocacy work of One Southern Indiana. You can see, I won't read through this list, but these are things that we do to sort of embrace and encourage a strong business environment for our business community, because we want to make sure that not only the state of Indiana is a good place to do business, we want to make sure Southern Indiana is equally as good to do business. And I ran through that pretty quickly. The second document that you have is what we call our tick sheet. And this is a listing of every one of those 132 projects that we have announced since July of 2006. And you can start at the newest and go to the first one, and you will see, Jeffersonville certainly had a good number of those projects listed, but it's a little more detail than the chart gives you. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the work we're doing in economic development.
I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't touched on it, it might be off subject, and if it is, I apologize, but we implemented a new criteria for our tax abatements this past year. How's that working out?
It's a great vetting. Honestly, it's a great vetting document for us. We've actually used it several times for companies that are under consideration for tax abatement. I don't think we've actually brought one forward to the council yet, but we have some in the pipeline. So we were honored and happy to be part of that, the process of putting that together, because I think there are a lot of things that are a little more than black and white as far as how the job creation and the wages and things like that. So it's good at giving credit to those companies that are doing things.
And I would add, it was incredibly foresightful to let companies know what the city expects of them in their stewardship. So the fact that they're getting scored, there will be scored on things such as whether they're a good practicing company for the environment, they're giving back, they're sponsoring events. You want companies that are going to come in and not just take, but to give back. And it sends a very respectful message to those companies. This is what we're looking for in Jeffersonville. These values are important to us.
You mentioned a couple companies during your Japan trip. Which companies were those again?
One was Idemitsu. Well, the parent company is Idemitsu Kozan. It's Japan's largest independent oil company. They locally, you all maybe remember them as Apollo America. They are now called Idemitsu Lubricants America. They've done a couple of expansion projects there. One of those we heard about when we were sitting in their offices in Tokyo. And there was another company, American Fuji Seal, which is owned by a company called Fuji Seal. We met with those folks in Tokyo as well. And as you know, that project has come to fruition at River Ridge. And there's another one in another city. It's in the Charlestown end of River Ridge, that DA Inc., which is owned by Daiwa Kasei. And we also visited with those folks and learned about that project as well.
I'll just thank you both, because One Southern Indiana is a huge asset to the city of Jeff. And we put very little funds your way, and we get a huge return. And your professionalism reflects well on us, and we appreciate that.
Thank you
very much.
I echo that, and I really appreciate, and I hope it continues this year where we haven't had a tax abatement, especially now we've got new members. It was a conversation that I kind of going out to companies and we see what they're, especially expansions, and that it was really for us to be hands-on, to go out to these companies and see firsthand what they're wanting, and it really worked well. I'd really like to see that continue again this year.
Excellent. Will do.
We appreciate it, and we do appreciate your support very much. Thank you.
I do have one question, and I asked this once before when you presented, and I anticipate the answer would be similar. What would you say is the number one barrier to bringing the higher paying jobs to River Ridge or to the Port of Indiana? What can we be focused on in our region, not just Jeffersonville, but in our region, to improve on?
We may have different answers if you'll indulge both of our answers, but I'll let Mr. Hall go first.
Well, that's a great question, and it's a question that we've asked internally a lot, and we've actually, our board has started to talk about this issue, and how do we raise, if our goal in economic development is to raise the quality of life, one of those measurements, of course, are the wages.
Right.
So how do we, I love having some of the name brands that we have in this community, but they aren't necessarily the highest paying. So how do we raise the bar, and how do we push our community? Because I think it's actually a cultural thing. How do we push our community to demand higher wages? I think one of the steps is this tax abatement survey. I think that sort of quantifies what we're looking for. But we have to be willing to push ourselves away from the table for companies and projects that aren't paying the wages that are going to help raise the level.
And the other side of that coin is workforce development. How do we have the employees that are skilled in an area that is going to attract the higher wage jobs? We think about some of the companies. We were out at Briova RX, the former Catamaran facility, now Briova RX. They're hiring pharmacists and pharmacy techs. Those are great jobs for our community. They're paying sustainable wages for a one-income household, which a lot of households are. They'll support in a very nice way and provide some discretionary income left over for that family. What we have to make sure that we have are the people who are skilled to fill those positions. So both sides of the coin have to be talked about, in my opinion, together. We can say we want high wage jobs and high skilled jobs. We have to make sure that the companies are going to be successful in finding those workers that are going to make them productive.
And workforce development was the term that I expected to hear, because that's what I'd heard before previously. And I would be interested, maybe separately, sitting down and discussing how we might be able to help support the region in that manner as a city, because it is something that we need to be buying into. How do we push forward and make sure that we do have the skilled workforce to sustain those jobs once they come here? Attract them.
It's a conversation we would love to engage in. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, number 2, Kim Calabro, an ordinance amending 2015 OR 57, which is the salaries of appointed officers and employees of the departments of the city of Jeffersonville.
Thank you.
This is the salary ordinance. Kim, if you don't mind, I'll just give a little background.
Okay.
The salary ordinance before us reflects a change in the mayor's office, basically putting an employee that was previously there back there.
It's on page 3.
It is on page 3. That's
Yes.
the Community Affairs Liaison. That is a job description that existed previously under past administrations, but had not existed since in Mike Moore's tenure. And he had requested that be put back as an assistant to his office. And I think everybody has spoken with the mayor on that. I don't know if you had anything to add, Kim.
You just did it for me. That's good. The only thing that I left off that I sent to Vicki is if you look at page 5, the incumbent who's currently in that position is currently working at the wastewater as the Utility Communication Operations Coordinator. So that position would be eliminated at the wastewater.
They are going to eliminate that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Pay grade is the same, salary is the same, the benefits everything is the same. It's just moving from the sewer department to the mayor's office, an employee, and that is pretty similar, I think. But
And basically moving it to align the pay appropriately with the department and the work and the scope of the work that that individual, that position has traditionally done.
right.
So I'm assuming, Heather, then you're going to have the necessary things before anticipating, this passing the first reading tonight, but by this, is we'll have to move this employee into general, because it currently is in sewer, so we'll have to have that in place. And I don't think that's been
It's not.
started tonight, so.
No, it's not on tonight, and it can't be approved on the 1st of February meeting. But we can approve this and get it in place, and then after you all have your workshop about all the others, and then tackle it all at the same time.
Motion to approve 2016 OR3 on the first reading. Second.
There's a motion and a second to pass 2016 OR3 on the first reading. Are there any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Number 3, Les Merkley, a resolution for the Common Council approving an issuance of leased rental refunding bonds by the Jeffersonville Redevelopment Authority.
You have in front of you a resolution which in effect requires your approval for purposes of the Redevelopment Commission moving forward with this matter. Periodically, we will have our financial advisors, Umball and Associates, review our outstanding bonds to determine whether or not it would be economically advantage to the city to refund those bonds. And when we say refund, basically that's just a refinance. They have looked at the 2006 outstanding redevelopment bonds. In 2006, we issued bonds for purposes of constructing the city garage and also the fire headquarters and also the new fire station out on 62. Umball and Associates has determined that it would be financially beneficial to the city and to redevelopment. These bonds are paid out of TIF. To refund these bonds over the life of the bond, in present day dollars, we would save approximately $516,000, and that's after issuance cost. So that's a substantial savings for the life of the bond. So this is a resolution that is required. Since this is a redevelopment bond, the statute does require that the city council approve the refunding, and then once you adopt this resolution, the Redevelopment Commission is meeting Wednesday to finalize the matter, and then hopefully we will close in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Interest rates are very low. They've never been this low, and we are afraid if we don't act quickly, they're going to start going back up, and we're going to lose that savings, because there is a threshold at some point where it is not usually financially beneficial for us to refund after you pay the issuance cost, but at over $500,000, we believe that is a good savings. Brian Colton from Umball and Associates is here, and I believe he's going to give you a brief summary of the analysis and how the numbers shake out. I believe he has some materials for you as well.
Is this something that will be passed on one? It's just one reading.
It's coming down the other end.
Does everybody have a copy of what I handed out? I think.
Same thing.
Oh, here, I've got one here. Hold this one apart. The first schedule that you have in front of you shows the estimated sources and uses for the bond issue. A couple of items to highlight on that schedule is the estimated amount of the bonds right now is about $7.7 million. There you go. In addition to that, there is a debt service reserve fund in place for the bonds of about $900,000. That reserve is 1 year's debt service on the currently outstanding bonds, so that reserve gets put into the refunding as well. Under the new bonds, we'll have a debt service reserve on this, but that reduces the size of that reserve by about $60,000. That's also about what the savings is per year, and we'll show that to you here in just a second. So there's the savings annually going forward for your debt service payments, but there's also the one-time annual savings on the size of that reserve. That money goes into the deal for the new reserve, then also to offset other costs, so you don't have to borrow as much money. For the rest of that schedule, the escrow fund, that's the money set aside to do the advance refunding, and then the underwriter's discount and the issuance costs. On the next schedule, this shows, maybe more difficult to show, the estimated amortization at this point in time. Actual interest rates won't be set for probably about a month and a half. We anticipate going out to the market early March with the closing towards the end of March. So as you know, rates can change on a daily basis. We think right now we're still in a very good time with where the rates are at. And so we actually anticipate these rates being better than what we'll actually get. If we went out today, we'd actually have better rates than these. So that's a positive note, but as Les mentioned, we'll keep an eye on it. If rates all of a sudden take off and we're not in position to issue the bonds yet at that point in time, we're not going to go out and do the refunding if it's not going to generate reasonable savings for the city. I think we've talked about having minimum savings of $50,000 a year. So, we'll keep an eye on that. If it's below that, we'll come back and say, now it's maybe $40,000. Do you still want to do it? Do you want to wait? We'd come back at that point in time. So we'll keep an eye on that. The third schedule shows, which you probably want that, don't you? Shows the comparison of the outstanding bonds and the current bonds. So the first column is the debt service on the outstanding bonds. And then the next column is the refunding bonds. So you can see it's about $60,000 per year in annual savings for the bond issue. Total savings, as Les mentioned, is about $500,000 net present value, which is about 7% savings on the bonds. A good rule of thumb is if you have savings on the bonds of about 3%, sometimes a little bit lower than that, but you want to usually have about 3% savings on the bonds, so we're more than 2 times that coverage level as far as our savings percentage. And then the last schedule that I'll talk about, the rest of it if you want to go through we can, but this kind of summarizes the different TIF areas that we pooled in anticipation of paying the debt service. And these are the areas that are currently paying the debt service on the 2006 bonds. And so it's the Vote Valve, Galvestar, Beth Nova, Keystone areas. And that's what the estimated tax increment column represents, is if you combined all those tax dollars together in the TIF areas, what is that amount? And then the refunding bonds is the amount next to that, and then the estimated tax increment remaining. So we have about 250% coverage, which is excellent coverage for when we're marketing the bonds. And the actual pledge of the bonds is any legally available revenues for the commission, which, as you know, the commission's main source of revenues is tax increment dollars. And then there is a property tax backup on the outstanding 06 bonds, so that would continue with these as well. But with the coverage levels that you see there, that's purely for marketing benefits. And then the last 4 schedules, if you want to go over, we can, but it's just the TIF estimates for each of the different TIF areas. So if you want to go through those, we can. This is the summary of that for the different TIF areas. You can see the revenues that are coming in. So if you want to go through the other schedules, we can, but I'll leave that up to you guys. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
This is a resolution that requires one reading, and the redevelopment commission still has to conduct a public hearing Wednesday, and also pass another resolution, and also to approve the issuance of the bonds, and also approve the lease rental agreement, because this is a framework that we set up we have a redevelopment authority that will actually owns these properties, and then we enter into a lease agreement with the redevelopment commission.
Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion then?
Go ahead. I move we approve 2016 R2. One. Is this the first resolution? R1? Parks Authority, maybe.
Yeah.
Mixed up.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve 2016 R1. Anything further? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Number 4 is an ordinance implementing procedures for approval of capital expenditures and purchases for the remaining of the year. What you'll have in your packet is an ordinance that I'd asked Mr. Lewis to prepare for the council. This is something that we've done typically, the council has done typically in the past, to stay on top of capital expenditures before, while we anticipate what our budget is going to get certified as, and if it gets cut by circuit breakers. So, basically it restricts any capital expenditures out of the budget, a tax fund budget, to $5,000 without the council's approval in an open meeting. This is not, does not restrict LOIT or edit funds, because those are income taxes, but it does restrict our property tax funds. You have an ordinance number?
4.
Did anybody have any questions?
I'll make a motion to pass 2016 OR4 in the first and second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to pass 2016 OR4 on the first and second. Anything further?
I have a question about it. My understanding was this dealt with we wanted to make sure that our property taxes came back, and is that not what this was for? Because the way this, unless I've not read it accurately, it looks like once we know what our property taxes are and the caps, and we've gone through that process, looks like this should sunset off, because if their capital expense was in their budget, we've already approved that. This is just kind of protecting us until that happens.
Right.
So
you're correct, and I don't think that that's how this is written, so we may
We
change
can,
that in the third reading.
This is the exact language. When Matt asked me to prepare this, is the exact language that we've done the past couple of years.
Yeah. Previously, I think the intent has been after we know where we're at to release those things, but that wasn't always the language. But we can make that change.
Can you just add that phrase for next time? That once the property tax caps are back and we've made whatever changes we've made, then this sunsets? Or, and then can we just do away with this after the cap? Okay, fair enough. Okay.
Not sunset clause in there, but what happens if for some reason you all have to make more cuts than what anticipated?
I got you.
I think it'll be easier once we actually
I think you all have.
Anything further? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Moving along. Nathan Pruitt. An ordinance imposing an immediate temporary moratorium of new and expanding auto-related businesses pending completion of a zoning ordinance update.
Good evening, Council. I really appreciate you taking the time, or giving me some of your time tonight. I'm excited to be before you as the new Planning Director for the City of Jeff, and want to bring to you some thoughts that our department has about moving forward and making us a vibrant city. So those thoughts center around, and I want to frame this as a 10th Street revitalization. And of course, what's before you is this auto-related use moratorium. So I just want to walk you through a quick few-minute presentation here, just got to give you an overview. So obviously the Jeffersonville area is extremely growth-heavy right now. I think we're a showcase community. We're going to have economic impacts that are going to change the face of the city for a long time, and our public spaces are going to change. And I think that this is a great time to start thinking about how do we define ourselves as that showcase community? How do we attract 18 to 34-year-olds and bring that talent here? So obviously, we're in a huge transformational stage. We've got the downtown revitalization, riverfront amenities are coming in. We've got 10th Street Gateway, not to mention Veterans Parkway, which has been speeding right along. Of course, we've also got the East End Gateway that will eventually come. I-265 interchange is going to take off in no time with that commercial development. Of course, we have River Ridge. So the question is, what happens to our central corridor? What happens to 10th Street? It's connected to all of our existing neighborhoods in the central core of the city, and so I think that it warrants us taking a look at that in more depth than not. So like I say, we're looking at 10th Street, and we should be asking ourselves, how do we want this street to look in 5, 10, 15, 25, even 100 years? How do we want it to feel, look? What businesses do we want to have? How do we want it to function? And what's the best for the overall community? So in any planning effort, there's 4 key questions. You have to ask where you're at now. So what are the existing conditions? Where are you going to go? And then where do we want to go? So what's the vision? And then how do we get there? So I'm going to walk you through those real quick. So today, we have some challenging uses that relate to auto-related businesses. And I just did a quick poll today of about the last year of code enforcement cases. So we had 30 auto-related use violations and enforcement activities within the last basically year. 17 of those were on 10th Street. So we're challenged by this. This is an ongoing issue. You can see the range of violations are very wide. It goes from people not getting BZA special exception use for auto uses all the way to things like signage on some of the gas stations, to parking on grass for auto related businesses, excess vehicles that are not prescribed by the code of how many you can have per business, and working on vehicles outdoors. So the list is huge. So in talking about 10th Street corridor and the commercial corridor, I've kind of made a segment of this space from Renfro to Main. This is 194 acres. What a huge opportunity we have, I think, to make 2 solid commercial miles of our corridor really strong, really vibrant, very amenity rich, and serving the needs of our community and our residents and all of our residents of the city. So we've got about 1 million square feet of commercial structures under roof, which is about 23 acres, so you can kind of divide that out there. There's quite a bit of green space and parking lots. So here we are now, today, with no changes, nothing's really been done. We've not really analyzed the corridor. We've not said what it is maybe we should do. We don't have a plan in place other than the comprehensive plan, which I'll get to in a minute. So where I'm at with it from a planning perspective and an engineering perspective is that we've got some poor design both on the road use facilities as well as some maybe not so great land use decisions that are making this corridor a liability for us. It's not giving us the most it could, and it's not giving us the most that our residents could have. So this is a quick little list of existing conditions that I would say are challenges. This corridor has some challenges. We've got very little new development happening other than the 265 interchange. We've got some aging and vacant structures. A lot of this is older, so you're starting to get into your C-class space, the stuff that unfortunately doesn't bring the best in business and the best in quality and services and amenities. So most of it's auto-centric. We've got very limited architectural history. That's a product of when it was built mostly. So that's something we have to keep in mind. Of course, we've got some brownfield issues. We've got contaminated lots. We've got some former gas stations that are giving us some trouble, which will be hard to develop somewhat. We've got underdeveloped lots, so there's a lot of parking space. There's a lot of frontage road. There's a lot of green space. It's underutilized. We've got room to grow on 10th Street, and I think we need to look at that harder. And of course, there's a lack of consistent design, signage, setbacks, landscaping. It's all over the place. So this is something I think that we need to keep in mind. So where are we going? So moving forward, this is the second step. Well, obviously you know about the 10th Street widening. We're improving the land through that corridor and the facilities. We're getting sidewalks. We're starting to look at landscaping. Traffic is being helped and mitigated. Excuse me. Signage is something we're also aware of, and so we're starting to address some of these issues that 10th Street has. But I think this is just the beginning, and we haven't put a full plan in place. So where do we want to go? I think we've already started to define where we want to move on this corridor and where the city's moving in the future, because we did a comp plan update. Many of you all were in those public meetings. We adopted this in 2015. It's an update to the 2007 plan. And so what it did is it said, hey, we've had a lot of unanticipated changes that have happened since 7 to 15 that we didn't even think about. We've had Big Four Bridge, obviously the interstate project, and what this big picture policy guide does is it says we need to capitalize on what we can do today. So it lays that out. So here's where we get into some difficulties with the fact that we have multiple layers to the planning world. And so we've got the evolving guides of both zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. Occasionally, they get out of sync. So we have a zoning code which has been amended through time with small amendments here and there, but the base of it was created in 2001. Today, we're at 2015. That's a decade and a half. I think we're definitely going to have to update our code within the next 6 months to bring us to today and set the comprehensive, consistent, coordinated vision that we want into our zoning ordinance. So there's kind of a misstep there. And this is part of the planning process. This is very normal for most communities, I would say, that there's a revision process and it's a discussion, and we work with the community on making these guides part of the city vision. So here's just an overview, 15 on the left, 07 on the right, future land use plan. This is a very key instrument and key tool that we have at our disposal for planning the city. So what does the future land use plan do? It directs growth, and in that, it is trying to achieve the vision that the plan set forth. It's not unconnected from the overall goal of what the comp plan wants to do. So it ties that language of what we want to see to the locations of where those things are and move us forward. It's the key piece of our zoning ordinance. We use this map to say how the zoning ordinance should be written, how it should read, and it really is the foundation for City Council as well as Plan Commission to make decisions on rezonings. So it's a very important document, and obviously it's been updated. So the second part of this, and the second onion layer to this, would be that we have planning districts. So this gives a kind of a broader stroke of what we think these little puzzle pieces are of our community, how they should function, how they should be seen, what kind of amenities they have, what kind of businesses they have. There have been some changes to this, and along that segment that I previously highlighted for you, we have a change that says let's do more dining, neighborhood services, offices, apartments, shops, retail. Let's get some more pedestrian-friendly environment on 10th Street. Let's make it a destination rather than just a pass-through from downtown to 265 to River Ridge. Let's actually make this pretty quality and get a lot of people excited about the fact that they live right next to it, basically. So how do we get to that point, to get to the vision that was set out by our comp plan? Well, I think there's 3 steps. One, today we can take a breather, a pause. That's what's before you today, which is a temporary moratorium. Then we can do a code review and an update. And then we can, 3, look at doing a corridor plan. So I actually want to push forward. My office is going to be very strongly supportive of doing a corridor master plan for 10th Street to help with all those individual efforts I talked about before. So today, what's before you today? It is a 6-month moratorium that pauses and lets us discuss and work out the uses that challenge our long-term vision for this corridor and throughout the city, to be honest with you. The first step, this is a first step in the revitalization of 10th Street, or it can be. And then the second part of this, so this is later, this is not today, after we get through this process, we would sit down and invite council to do a code review with us and to work through updates and say, from those two documents that are not really in sync right now, let's bring those together. You were part of the comp plan process, let's make you part of the zoning ordinance development stage, basically. And then the last part of this, so this is the long-range planner in me, I get really excited about this part, is doing a comprehensive review. So working with engineering, working with Parks and Rec, working with our KIPTA regional transportation agencies, and putting an overall vision together for the quarter, what we want it to look like, what's the land uses, how do we attract development, what kind of development do we want, where do the sidewalks go, how do we make traffic flow better, do all those amazing things all in the same corridor and make it outstanding. So what is a moratorium? Well, it's temporary. It's not going to be forever. It has a 6-month expiration date. So it's like your milk, it's going to go away eventually. It can be lifted. There is a condition within this ordinance that says at any point, if council determines that there is a need, this can be lifted. It's as simple as that. The other thing to take note is this has been deployed before. We've done LED sign moratoriums, we've done apartment moratoriums, pain management clinics, and I think there's a couple others that I don't remember. This is just incidental to the zoning process. Sometimes when things get so out of whack, out of sync, as it were, you have to kind of have an intermediary control, and that's what this is. So what is it not? This is important. It's not a change in the zoning code. We're not proposing any language changes at all to the zoning code. It is just a pause button. We do not rezone any property with this, and it does not stop anything that is approved or is a pending application. So anything that we have approved in the last 2 or 3 years that hasn't quite finished yet, they're unaffected completely. It doesn't touch it. And then I would think that it does not cause an undue hardship on property owners because we actually have dozens of permitted uses within each zoning classification. And so we've got 5 of 68 uses that we're discussing on C1 and 11 of 80 on C2. You can see the use categories there as well. You know, it's food service and sit-down restaurants and offices and retail and recreation, all those things that communities need as well. So before you today is something that is a first step. It's a very minor step, and it just gives us a little bit of time to sit together, to work through the zoning code, see what those updates are going to be, if any, and move that forward. So I'm not sure if this is the vision we want for 10th Street. I'm not saying it is what it is now, but it's just an illustrative image of kind of quality, signage, setbacks, road structure, access, sidewalks, all those components in one system, in one image. And then I think we can start to have a conversation about what we want it to be in the future. It doesn't have to be this, but it can be something maybe like it or borrow from it. So I'm about placemaking. I want good amenities. I want good services. I want community life to be civic and attractive and memorable. And I think that if we do this together, I think it's going to make us a lot better off in attracting talent and attracting new faces. That's all I've got. So if you have questions for me, I'd be happy to take them.
I do.
Okay, go ahead.
This doesn't encompass, this is just kind of like an overlaid from I-65 to Renfro? Is that
No,
correct?
so I apologize. This moratorium would be in effect citywide, but the definitions or the areas that you're speaking about that appear in the code are references to sections of the comprehensive plan that define areas as a district. So it's just saying, in this district, we envision this, and we've already decided that in October of last year, we envision it to be this, and this is what it said. And so I'm just kind of showing you the overlaps of where there's inconsistencies between what the comp plan said and where we are with our code. So it is, to answer your question, it's citywide.
Secondly, you showed the slide where you have the issues, all the violation issues with the automotive industry, for the lack of a better descriptor. If we decided to pick food industry, would we have a similar length of list and
No.
similar number of violations? I mean, I'm not setting you up for anything.
I
I'm just
understand.
asking, like, do any industry share that kind of very long list?
No.
Okay.
Nope. And I would point out that it is unfair, obviously, to target a specific use and say certain bad actors in our community don't follow the rules, therefore we don't want you either. That's not the message that I'm making here. The message is let's look holistically at actual use and what that use drives as far as amenities and what we want the corridor to look like, and is that consistent with the long-term vision?
Okay, well, then you've answered another question, and then yet another that I had, is you say you want to redo all of this 6-month moratorium. I don't know what everybody's going to do, but I know that I would be very unwilling at the end of 6 months, regardless of what the council does now, to proceed with another.
Right, I think that would be...
Is there 6 months, are you saying with certainty that you can get finished with what you want to be finished with in 6 months?
Yes.
And I had the same comment for Mr. Pruitt this morning when I stopped in his office, that if this passed today, I would not support an extension past the 6 months originally. If we're going to do this, push pause, so to say, to get some work done, then we better get some work done.
Yep, absolutely.
And I'm sorry if I'm dominating. You said that anything that's already been in process would not be affected by this. What is the starting point that you're proposing, or maybe this is a question for legal counsel, what is starting process mean?
Let's clear it up right now, all right? It appears that somebody thinks this is targeted toward them. It's not. The property that I believe that has been discussed, that somehow this ordinance is targeting, that's not true. The Clark County Auto Auction location currently on 10th Street, an application has been made to rezone that and so that application has been made. This moratorium does not impact that. That application has been made. Any applications that are made before this ordinance is adopted by the City Council on all 3 readings and signed by the mayor into law, they're going to move forward. We can't stop those. That's just illegal. We cannot pass a moratorium and then make it retroactive. So it's Clark County Auto Auctions made an application, I believe, today. So they're moving forward. This moratorium does not impact them whatsoever. This moratorium also is not just, it's about a lot of issues that we have in the city. Right now we have a lawsuit involving a denial of a gas station, okay? We need to clean up this ordinance or we're going to continue to have legal problems, because I believe the Planning Commission, Ms. Gill, can contest to that. Do you want a gas station on every corner? Do you want Veterans Parkway to be nothing but filling stations? Do you want Veterans Parkway to be nothing but car lots? Well, unless we address this issue in our zoning code, we have very little at our disposal to deny those requests. So we're hoping that we can take 6 months to review our ordinance, to update it, to make it stronger, to further what the council believes that we should have in the city, just like we did on signs, just like we did on pain management clinics, just like we did on sexual-oriented businesses. These moratoriums, they're fairly common, and in the past, the council has extended them. So,
Did you have anything else?
and it's unfortunate that, I think this has been blown out of proportion, because I would hope that if there's a legal question regarding the ordinance that the public may have, it may be helpful to call my office. I can probably clarify whether or not it applies to them.
Well, and I had one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's say, as you said, we've taken all these, we've gotten things we've never dreamed we'd gotten.
Yep.
And I know there's a carve-out in this to where we can waive the moratorium. So I kind of have a 2-part question for you. If we do, in fact, waive the moratorium, specifically, if I'm someone looking to invest, how much longer specifically do I now have to wait and go through to get going? And 2, if we waive it for one person, company A, and we go, oh, this is a wonderful thing, again, this may be for legal counsel, is there any question of litigation on the next person that says what they got, we want what they got? So maybe each of you could take half of it.
I think you have that option before you, but my advice would be, and I think Scott would agree with me, I wouldn't waive any of the right now during that 6 months. I think you would open yourself up to, because how are you going to justify that you waived it for the ABC company, but you did not waive it for the XYZ company? I think that's in there just as a out in case something would need to be done.
Like in the 5th month and 29th day,
Yes.
something major happens, then you could pull that. Okay.
Yeah, but I would not advise that you waive it unless it's an extraordinary circumstance.
Anyone else?
And then how long, let's say the magic thing happens, how long is it, do we just have to meet and we could all vote on one passage? How long would it take to do that in that instance? So it'd have to be 3 readings.
Of course, you can vote to suspend the rules.
Yeah, on all 3 readings, if it was,
Okay.
yeah.
So unless we did that, it's at best a month and a half. And
No. When we say 3 readings, what we normally, that's 2 meetings. You normally, what you do is you will pass an ordinance on first reading, then come back at the next reading to pass it on second and third reading. That's what this council has done in the past, because
Well, the chances of them coming in the day before they have to put it in and asking for it is very limited. So in essence, depending on when they ask for it, anywhere between a month and a month and a half.
Well, and you can also call special meetings too. Within 48 hours, you could have a special meeting, and you could have it, even with 2 separate meetings within 48 hours, you could have it repealed.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, well, I'm finished.
Mr. White?
I move that we pass ordinance 2016 OR5.
Which readings first?
First and second public comment.
We do. Before we hear your motion.
Something to say about this?
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. Before we hear your motion, in the past, we have allowed public comment. Public comment, for the audience, public comment is typically at the end of the meeting. However, if you're here for a specific issue, we do allow we have allowed in the past for the public comment on the specific issue to come forward.
Because this is technically not a public hearing type of
Right.
It's
Right. So if someone is signed up for the issue, we can certainly hear that. And it looks like we have plenty. First on the list is Paul Fetter. And Paul, before you get started, for everyone, public comment is limited to 3 minutes. When you come to the podium, please state your name and your address for the record. Your 3 minutes will start after you've stated your name and address. So 2007 ordinance.
Thank you. My name is Paul Fetter, 1611 East 10th Street. I am here today because of my concerns about the proposed auto-related moratorium that's on today's agenda for 4 major reasons. Number one, our facility permitting is not yet complete, and this ordinance, as it is written, could ban building permits, and not just ours, but anything else that's currently in development. If you carefully read section number 4, it lists what it denies, and that is permits. And if you read number 5, which is the exclusion of the permits it allows, it only exempts vested uses for repair, maintenance, and safety issues. Number 2, our existing facility consists of an administration office connected to 5 bays. It also includes 12 acres and is best suited for auto-related uses. We currently have it under contract to sell, and the buyer's made a zoning application. We believe, given the timing of this ordinance and the comments that have been made to us, that this moratorium is being targeted towards us. It will harm us, and in the event our current sale is disrupted, it will devalue our property. This sends the wrong message. Number 3, this sends the wrong message to those that are looking to invest in Jeffersonville. It's a citywide ban, and it would block, for instance, a new Thornton's, a tire store, a car wash, a new dealership, or even the Costco that's hoping to move up towards the
powder plant. Current zoning requirements are in place that ensure quality development. The 2007 automotive special exception requirements are even stricter than the normal zoning code. They have requirements that include penalties, fines, and even clawbacks of zoning. A moratorium is overreaching. Automotive uses are far more economically engaging than most other uses, including hundreds of millions of dollars annually locally in economic impact. Thousands of people are employed or directly or indirectly locally. Automotive uses engage in finance, inventory, sales, transportation, maintenance, and many other facilities. Please vote no on this ordinance. It's bad for Jeffersonville. Let's encourage investment instead of scaring it off with a moratorium that affects over 30 uses. If you want to address a specific issue, add it to the auto-related business piece that was developed in 2007. A moratorium on an entire industry is wrong. Thank you.
Is there any comment? Of Ed Flaw?
Ed Flaw, yes.
Yes, sir.
600 North Whitcomb, Clarksville, Indiana. This ordinance violates the taking clause of the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It's called taking. When you're taking from a business, these businesses can sue the city for millions of dollars. And another thing, what they call the effects doctrine, as city council, when you leave office, you are liable. You are immune right now, but when you leave office, you are liable for your assets when you pass these ordinances, called the effects doctrine. Now, this is going on all over the United States. I just left Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They want you to have 3,000 square feet of B1, and these plans are all over the United States. This is an effort to control the whole economy of the United States. The number 2 retail business in the United States is the automobile business. You've got a car lot outside there. That's a car lot. That's a car parking lot. You cannot expand that car parking lot. You would violate this ordinance. This is absolutely an effort to control the economy. It's illegal. And you're going to have lawsuits after lawsuits over these businesses and cost this city millions of dollars. And you're liable too when you leave office. Thank you.
I'm not on the docket to get out and speak.
Come forward. Hold on just a moment. Okay. Let me get through our list here. Alan Applegate. Oh.
Alan Applegate with Applegate Pfeiffer Pulliam. I've represented the Fedders in their prior zoning application, and I represent Greater Clark County School Corporation, who did file the application today for rezoning. There are several applications that are entailed in connection with rezoning generally. There's rezoning, there's BZA applications for variances if need be. There's the development plan requirements, which are part of your zoning code for your 10th Street corridor. So you have a layer already that exists on of protection, and that is rezoning. Then you have a layer of protection for anything on 10th Street, which is development plan requirements, development plan obligations. And that is drawing the picture and showing what's going to be built there. I also represent 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 or 15 people that own property between 265 and downtown Jeffersonville, some of who are currently under contract, some of who are negotiating to purchase property, all of whom have something to do possibly with an auto-related business. That does sound overstated. I represent many people. There are not that many people involved in these negotiations, the 2 or 3, but all 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4 of those folks would be directly affected by this moratorium. And that is no application can be filed at all. Nathan went into 10th Street, 10th Street, 10th Street, and Les then talked about Jeffersonville Center up, off 62 or 65, And what are we talking about? I mean, now it's citywide. I represented Mr. Huber in 2007 and was the test crash dummy for the ordinance that was passed in 2007 dealing with auto-related businesses. We went to 3 different meetings. We had development plans. We had landscaping requirements. We developed a piece of property that frankly is not an eyesore. But then right after we got ours passed, the gentleman next on the docket came up and he said, well, I'd like to do a car lot there at Sharon Drive. And they said, well, what are you going to do? He said, well, what they're doing. Okay, that's approved. The point being is my client spent 3 meetings, thousands of dollars, getting a development plan that was talked about, discussed, reasoned, and the next guy got up and said, I'm going to do what he's doing, and they didn't do any of that. So it's enforcement. Is that my 3 minutes?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So there's a way to enforce the rules already, and I think that's the critical element other than a moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Hanna?
Thanks for hearing me tonight. Scott Hanna, Heritage Engineering, 603 North Shore Drive, Jeffersonville, Indiana. I'm really looking forward to working with Nathan. I think he's going to do great things. I am very concerned. My partner Bob is with me. We have several developments that could be affected in this corridor Mr. Applegate kind of speaks of. So I'm very concerned, even maybe into River Ridge, what is the definition of this? And I'm just concerned that it could potentially prevent really good development. So just wanted to make my case heard. I appreciate your time.
And David Nichols?
Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is David Nichols. I own Nichols Development. We're located at 6060 Dutchman's Lane, Louisville, Kentucky 40205. We appeared before you some time ago. We are putting together the Jeffersonville Commons development, which is just inside of 265 from Sellers Court down past Candy Lane, a couple thousand foot of frontage. 50 million plus investment that we're contemplating doing there. I agree with Nathan. There needs to be some better controls. We're going to make a large investment if we build this project. We would like to see some of those uses from there to downtown cleaned up and better policed and better landscaping. We've talked to you guys about with investment that we're going to make, we'd like to see 10th Street redone and be a nice entrance to the city and streetscape with landscaping and sidewalks and controls and median enhancements. I don't believe the moratorium's the way to do it. One of our major tenants is going to spend $23 million investment. With this moratorium, they won't come to the project. They have a use that will be prohibited under this. So this will hugely affect whether or not we do Jeffersonville Commons. So, you know, there's lots of different ways to deal with the issue, tightening up the ordinances, having hearings. We'll participate. We'll have architectural and landscaping controls through our entire project that we're going to put together. We'd like to see those implemented in as much of Jeffersonville on 10th Street as possible. So I just ask you to look at it. I think Nathan's done a good job of identifying this. Let's figure out a different way to get together and accomplish what we're trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I had to...
Care if I speak real quick? Okay. How's it going? Dustin Isaacs, 1806 Crestview Drive, New Albany, Indiana. I'm a young business owner, and I'm excited at what's going on in Jeff. I'm from Jeff, and last week I acquired a contract on a piece of property in Jeff to start a car lot. That's a nice car dealership. And I'm kind of taken by all this. It's all hit me pretty fast. I'm new at all this stuff. But as a new young business owner, I mean, what would I do for 6 months? I mean, I have to do something. So I'm just from what I'm seeing, I just don't think it's the right way to go, so just take that. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to speak tonight too on this subject.
On this subject?
Yes.
I got you down for another subject.
That's all right. I
Okay.
can do it later.
All right. Go ahead, Mr. Smith. You got your 3 minutes.
All right. I'm Ron Smith, 3310 Holman Lane. I would like to welcome your new people because I think you're really going to be an asset to this city. I already see that. Our IQ's gone up. So anyway, what I would like to say first of all is that what a waste it would be. We have done enough favors for the auction automobile people. What a waste, huge waste it would be to take that property they're going to leave and let it turn into a bus depot. What in the world are we thinking? If we let this happen, we're dumber than a box of rocks. I mean, we do not want anyone to drive through our city, and when they get up to here, we have the potential to have something that's really going to be nice, and something that will create jobs and enhance the looks of it. And if you want to park 100 school buses on that location, you are absolutely crazy. Beyond dumb. Now, I've had my say sort of, but please don't, do what is best for the city of Jeffersonville and the people of Jeffersonville, and quit dealing with these lobbyists. We have enough lobbyists all over the world, and now we've got them here wanting to take advantage of us one more time. And it's time that this stopped. Seriously. I mean, look at these people that are here. They're here because they need more money. They're millionaires and they need more money. It's time we did something worthwhile for the people of Jeffersonville. I hope you keep this in mind. Don't waste that property. That would be a total waste of it. And I'd like to say another thing. We have probably got one of the best mayors we have ever had. He's doing a real good job in my opinion. Now, I live at 3310 Holman Lane. I have probably seen 50 accidents in front of my house. I have waited for minutes I have waited 5 and 10 minutes in my driveway to get out and turn onto Holman Lane. And guess what? A lot of times I've had to turn right and go down the street and turn around and come back to go where I wanted to go. Now, if you've got $6 million to throw it away on Holman Lane and widen that road before a bunch more people get killed and hurt and maimed. I haven't had one in my yard for about 2 weeks now. Went 100 feet out of the road and ended up at the telephone pole in my neighbor's yard. So don't waste our money and don't waste the assets we have and quit giving these lobbyists favors. Thank you very much.
All right, that's exhausted our public comment list.
I'm sorry, but we haven't been given money, nor are we asking for money.
Mr. Fetter, thank you. I understand.
I have a question about the way this will work.
Well, first of all, I mean, did you have a question?
You'll probably answer.
Okay. There was reference to the ordinances before you, specifically Section 5 exemption. That section is in reference, for example, if there is an existing business, this moratorium would not prohibit that business doing any repairs or maintenance or anything like that. So that's what that is dealing with. It has nothing to do with whether or not this applies to existing businesses, because the law is quite clear. Once you have a vested right, we cannot pass a law that retroactively takes that right away from you. And the Greater Clark County School System has made an application for a bus depot at the current site of the Clark County Auto Auction. That vested right is there. This moratorium does not change that. They've made application, they've paid their application fee. That's moving forward, whether this moratorium passes or not. And also, Mr. Applegate talked about the layers of zoning That is true, and once application's made, whether it requires rezoning, whether it requires a variance, whether it requires a special exception, any of those zoning requirements that would be required in our zoning code for that business, once they've made application before this ordinance is adopted by the city council and signed by the mayor, this moratorium does not apply to. So whether there's one layer that they're asking for or 5 layers, it's still the same. That's just, to me, just complicating the issue. Then Mr. Applegate talked about that he was representing one of the first clients under the 2007 changes to our ordinance regarding auto-related businesses. I think his statement is why we need to address our ordinance. The fact that one standard was applied to one applicant and another standard was applied to another applicant. To me in itself right there shows that we've got a problem with our current ordinance that needs to be looked at. And let's assume we do not do a moratorium. If we do not do a moratorium, then you run the risk of there being a rush of applications before we can amend our zoning code. Now, if you don't think that the Greater Clark County School Corporations didn't run down here Friday afternoon and make their application because they knew this was going to be coming before you, I have a hard time believing that. So if you don't pass the moratorium, these developers are going to be rushing in to make application for auto-related businesses before you have a chance as a city council to think about this issue and develop a plan on how you want to deal with it and amend your zoning code. And it's going to be a knee-jerk reaction, and I've been doing this for nearly 20 years, and anytime you do legislation based on a knee-jerk reaction, it's usually a bad outcome. And the other thing to keep in mind with the East End Bridge and the development that's going to happen out there, Nathan hit upon this, that we are going to continue to see movement of businesses away from the 10th Street corridor, and they're going to start moving out. And you're going to have more and more vacant buildings along the 10th Street corridor, and if we do not have a plan on how we're going to address that, we're going to continue to have blighted property and vacancies along 10th Street. And what we're asking for is 6 months to study the issue, to have public meetings, public input, and at the end of the day, it's going to be the city council's decision as to what direction we go.
Mr. Merkley. Mr. Nickley's, I believe, talked about the Norton Commons. If I remember correctly, last year, I was on the planning commission, we approved that project, and that project's been...
But that was only for a plat.
Okay.
There were no specific uses in that plat.
Okay. So it was accurate that what he's planning to bring there would be prevented by this?
During the 6 months, yes. But, again, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've heard developers, I'm still waiting for a movie theater on Veterans Parkway, so.
So you feel like putting this off 1 week, you're going to see a lot of applications? Or a month, or?
Well, I think for us to amend our zoning code, it's not first of all, how do we want to amend it? I'm not talking about the moratorium. I'm talking about to address the concerns that Nathan has as the Director of Planning and Zoning for auto-related businesses. We would have to update our zoning code. Well, I don't think we can do that in a week or 2 weeks. And I think it would be probably advantage to have public input. I don't think we just want to update our zoning code without getting some input from the public and businesses. So, it's the same thing we did with signs. We were having real issues with signs, so we just said we're going to put a moratorium so we can update our ordinance, which I think we have a pretty good ordinance. So, and we involved the public to come up with that. So.
I have a question now for Scott, and this is for me. When this was a moratorium on a certain aspect of a certain industry over the city, not knowing the situation now has come to light with Greater Clark County Schools, now that that's somehow part of this, where does that put me as far as being an employee of Clark County Schools?
Well, my understanding is that they have already filed their application for the rezoning of that particular project. this moratorium would not affect that. That would
Okay.
apply to that. I know.
It needs to be added to that then, because it doesn't.
Well, I think, no, I mean, it's standard law, right?
Yeah, I mean,
It only takes application for permit after this is passed.
this ordinance is not effective, this ordinance is not effective until it's passed in all three readings by the city council, signed by the mayor. Okay? We're not making it retroactive. I don't know how many times I have to say this. And you pretty much learned this in first year of law school, you cannot make a retroactive law.
Yeah, and real quick, Indiana case law is very, very clear. Just the fact that you file an application for a particular project, Indiana case law recognizes that as a vested interest or a vested right. You don't even have to start the project. It has nothing to do with like digging soil. Once you file that application, then whatever laws are applicable at the time you file that application go forward for that entire project. You can't retroactively change the law. So once an application is filed, even if there's subsequent permits or steps you have to take, that initial application for a project, Indiana case law is pretty clear. You're grandfathered in any sort of subsequent changes of zoning rules or whatnot. So this is not applied to
Right.
Do we add anything to that?
I'm afraid not.
Can I comment now?
Yep.
I'll just make a couple comments. I appreciate Nathan trying to be visionary and out there. We've been talking about 10th Street for years. I don't, all of a sudden now we're going to start, and I'm glad we're starting. But I don't know why we don't go ahead and start with your process without the moratorium. Just start working on the code and start making the revisions, and let's get this. Let's try to cast our vision out there. But I'm very concerned about telling any businesses, no, we don't want your business in Jeff. We heard from Mr. Nicholas a while ago. That's a big concern for me. I was concerned before that our school corporation had spent dollars and a lot of effort in the Clark County Auto Auction. It's their property. If they don't sell it, or if we say you can't do anything with it for 6 months, I don't know what that does to them. Because their new place isn't built, it may not be anything to them. But it does put a stop on anybody that's even looking at that use. And that use has been, all along there, has been auto-related for almost as long as I know. You got a car wash next to it, you have a gas station next to it, and you got a tire store right down the street, right next to it. And I want us to cast that vision. But to me, if it's not our property, then what are we imposing on the property owner as far as a cost to them? That's are we overstepping? I don't necessarily think the moratorium is the magic bullet, because we heard tonight that now it would be capped at 6 months. And if this either isn't done within 6 months, or even if it is done in 6 months, then what are we going to have out there? If we want restaurants there, great. I'm all for restaurants. If you could get a PF Chang's there, I'm all for it. But to me, we have to be cautious on what we do, because we were told it's going to be all buses and it's going to look horrible. Well, if you talk to the school corporation, they have a plan. I don't know if you've seen it. I saw a picture of it, that you won't see the buses. It'll be screened, bermed, landscaped. That certainly will look a lot better than it does now. And so those are just some thoughts that are swirling through my head. Is at what point does government go from visioning and trying to cast that vision to overstepping, where we're infringing on Mr. Fetter's rights or Mr. Nicholas' rights or whoever's rights? It could be somebody else's property next month. So that's my concern that was going up there. I wanted to voice that.
Well, everybody keeps bringing up about the Federal property, and that's a non-issue now, because I don't understand why we keep bringing this up, because it's a non-issue. It's going to go through the process, so this will not affect them in any way. But one thing that I'm concerned about, and with having, and this was not just recently talked about or brought up to affect any piece of property, because I sit on planning and zoning, and I've had these conversations with Nathan. As a matter of fact, I've been out 3 times with Mr. Merkley and with Rob Ways, and my concern, because I sit in the 5th District, and we have all this development going on all around the edges of the city. But right here, I'm afraid if we don't have some sort of vision, or if we don't look at this, the middle of our city is just going to fall in on itself. I'm sorry, but it is, because look what we're stuck with right now on 10th Street while we're having these issues. Go up and down. How many abandoned gas stations do we have? And we're stuck with that property because of the environmental issues. We have the tanks that are in the ground. We have that Sonic that went out. That's why 10th Street is in the situation that we're in, is because right now, if it meets our standards, we have to pass it. We have genuine concerns on planning and zoning, and we're told all the time, if it fits our ordinance, we have to pass it. We have to pass it. Well, apparently at one point, everybody had to pass all the gas stations. There was nothing in place they're not held accountable for what we're left with, so we're stuck with property with tanks in the ground that can't be developed. So that's a major concern of mine. And I think this would address that for any future coming in, correct, Nathan? That we would address, that we wouldn't be stuck in this situation. We wouldn't have other areas in the city, especially 10th Street, continue to look like it is right now.
To piggyback off your comment, you're correct in saying that if there is something that comes to the Planning and Zoning Commission that meets standards, we're obligated to allow those projects to move forward. And that's one reason one project was denied, and we're in litigation now because of that. Because while the standards, the code allowed for that project to move forward, the vision and the comp plan, it didn't meet the comp plan or the vision for the area. And because the vision is the vision and everybody wants Jeffersonville to grow in the right way, I've heard that so many times over the last year. We have to be responsible in our growth, and we have to grow the right way. Well, because we took steps to grow the right way, we're getting sued because our ordinance, our zoning code is outdated. And if we pass this tonight on, did you say the first reading and the first and second?
First and second.
On the first and second reading, we have a week to come back and address some of the issues that Mr. Nicholas might be able to work out, or that Mr. Fetter might be still concerned about. I mean, there are things that we can work on this to change it if necessary, to make it more appeasable to projects that are already in play, or projects that are on the horizon, ready to file something tomorrow. I've heard, it gets me that a year of campaigning, I heard we need to grow responsibly, and I want to be on the city council to help us grow responsibly, manage the growth with the bridges, and this is part of that. That's what a lot of people said, and that's what this does, in a sense. This starts that process, in my opinion.
Well, and then correct me if I'm wrong, how is us basically, all we're doing is putting that pause button, like Nathan, his term. How is that hurting businesses? How is that affecting businesses? Because I think, it's delaying maybe an application that needs to come in, but not the ones that are already in the process. So how does that really affect a business?
I understand that, if a small business has bought a piece of property on 10th Street and they're getting their ducks in a row to file an application, I understand how this could be cumbersome to that. And maybe that's something that we need to consider over the next 7 days. But as far as saying that, this is going to have dramatic ramifications on the city, this is government. Nothing works quickly. A 6-month moratorium, in my opinion, is very minimal for us to be able to, and that's why I said to Mr. Pruitt, if we're going to do this, we got to make sure that we're going to do this, because 6 months is not a lot of time, in my opinion, when it comes to how slow the processes work, and having public meetings, and gathering that data, and actually developing a plan to move forward.
I found myself
Mr.
rambling.
President?
Yes, sir.
Are you going to allow discussion after a motion's been seconded?
Amongst ourselves.
Yes, sir. The motion was...
It's not, I was just asking about the process.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I have a question for Scott Lewis. I'm employed somewhat by the Clark County Auto Auction. Are you confident that this no way obstructs their deal with Greater Clark School Systems?
Based upon what I was just told today by Les, that they have filed their application, that has initiated the process, so after they have, I've not seen the application, I can tell they filed the application.
We are not enforcing this. This moratorium is in fact, we are not enforcing this.
Yeah, well, you couldn't do it for anybody else, an application, yeah. So in fact, if in fact they filed their application, it is not applicable to the Clark County Auto Auction site and the Greater Clark School Auction.
Unless there has been an application filed, correct?
Yes, there has. Based upon that, the law is very clear that once you file an application, case law calls that a vested right or a vested interest. Even if you haven't started anything, once you file that application, you have the right to pursue that, including all the subsequent steps.
And in addition to that, this morning I saw the application that was made in Mr. Pruitt's office.
Very early today.
It came in over the weekend, so it will most likely be on the docket for the March meeting. Missed the deadline for the February meeting, on the docket for a March meeting. If it's heard in March, which it should be, regardless of this, it comes to the council the 1st of April. We're already halfway through this moratorium anyway.
Now with the application, I was going to abstain, but I believe I can withdraw. Would you feel comfortable with me voting?
Yeah, I would thought you would have no conflict on that.
Because it's already been taken. Okay.
And I think Matt makes a good point too. I mean, I think you have to understand the zoning process. I mean, they only meet once a month. We're talking a 6-month moratorium. I mean, if someone wanted to make an application, I mean, it doesn't just happen overnight, especially with property that we have to zone, that exception. If the property's got to be developed, you've got to have a development plan. I mean, this just doesn't appear overnight. So sometimes it does take 2 or 3 months for a development to run through
The process.
And, and yes, I mean, whether you like it or not, you don't want to tell businesses, people how to deal with their property and do with their property. You probably just need to repeal the zoning. That's what your zoning code does. You don't pass law ordinances to tell businesses what to do and what not to do.
There was a motion. Was there a second?
I got a couple of questions. Could we shorten that? I mean, 6 months, is that, if we shorten that a little bit, like 3 or 4 months, would that make?
If you're going to amend the zoning code, you're going to have to have public hearings on that. So it has to be developed, and then you have to have public hearing on the adoption of the new code, right? The Planning Commission?
Yes.
So it's going to
And that's why,
need some time to be developed and then passed.
why I said 6 months is not a lot of time.
And this doesn't affect the fetters?
No.
There was a motion. Was there a second?
I'll second.
Was there any further discussion?
I'd like to make some comments.
Sure.
And Les touched on it with his last comment. The whole purpose of the zoning ordinance is to limit the types of businesses that a city has. Okay, so to go to the extreme as people do, there was a time where Jeffersonville had a bunch of wedding parlors on Court Avenue and the Garage Club where Hardee's is and gambling spots, neon signs all down Spring Street, and we don't want that. So this is what we're talking about, things that we would want our city and how we want our city to look like over the next, as Nathan said, 5, 10, 50, 100 years. So it's going to be tough on some businesses that want to come in, but if that's not what's in the vision, then that's not in the vision. And so, there was a time, I think, when people said, why come to Jeffersonville from Louisville? They just have gas stations and car lots. So we want a mixed bag where people, we talked about earlier, where what's going to attract the higher paying jobs? How are we going to get a headquarters here? Well, that's going to come into the quality of life. And what they see when they drive out of their neighborhood into the city to enjoy, to shop, and to do things, to send their kids to school. That's what we need to think about when we're developing this code. And a 6-month moratorium to stop what I think between the first and second and the third reading will be the onslaught of applications, I think is worth our while to do, so we can reflect on what we want the city to look like, allow the planning director to, in coordination with us and the business community, come together with some new variation of the zoning code where then we can take applications and not be subject to lawsuit, and then attract the kind of businesses we want.
I'd like to share my comments on it. What I struggle with is seeing this moratorium and revitalizing 10th Street as mutually exclusive. I think that this moratorium is excessive. I don't think that it's necessary to tell private owners what to do with their land. I think we can still carry on with the plans that have been, and this vision that have been set before us without this moratorium. And there are processes in place, and that's I think where my thoughts are on this discussion.
Anything further? To re-emphasize, we're going to take a vote. If the vote is successful, the moratorium is not in place. We will vote again on February the 1st, right here at 7 o'clock. If the vote's not successful, then that's the end of that. So there was a motion, there was a second. Anything further?
I would say if the moratorium is not successful, it doesn't mean it's the end of Nathan's work. He could get going in it.
I agree.
Hopefully he's already started on.
I agree.
On that stuff. Okay.
This is the first and the second reading for 2016 OR 5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Aye.
It looks like 6-2. There are 8 of us here, right? 6-2 in favor. Okay. Moving on. Les Merkley, an ordinance adopting an ordinance violations bureau.
This is an ordinance that I would just ask that we just pass on first reading, because we still need to do some more work on this. I've been working with the clerk on this, and Scott and I've had some discussions this evening. We're probably going to have to maybe consider making some amendments, but we just want to get the ball rolling. I don't think the clerk's office is even prepared to even start doing this, but with the abolishment of the city court, we are in a situation as a city that we do not have any ability or avenue to adjudicate or deal with ordinance violations, specifically any ordinance violations that the police department issues or the animal control officers issue. For example, ordinances to deal with speeding, running the stop sign, parking, and animal control, running at large, and so forth. In the past, those have always been filtered through Jeffersonville City Court, and my office prosecuted those ordinance violations. Right now, we are not issuing those ordinance violations either by the police department or animal control because we have nowhere that we can prosecute those violations. We have looked elsewhere in the state of Indiana for some guidance on the best way to handle this. Obviously, there's a legal framework that's set forth in the statute, but also just what is a efficient way to do this. In a lot of cities, because again, most cities do not have a town court or a city court, they have set up ordinance violation bureaus with the clerk's office, and we process the ordinances through there. My office prosecutes them. 90% of them are actually paid, and the 10% that are not paid, then my office is responsible for prosecuting in some manner. But again, I don't think we're ready to pass this on final reading. I would just ask that you adopt it on first reading, and then Scott and I are going to get together, and I'm assuming we'll get with the clerk as well, and see if we need to make any changes, any tweaks to this before we move forward.
Mr. Merkley, I know you said it's going to be tweaked and look like, but when it gets to that point, shouldn't we have fee structures set up in this? Like, because I know we ran into issues with the street department ordinances where one said one amount, one said another. Would we have to establish that in this ordinance?
Well, we have all our fee establishments, all of our fees have been established by ordinance. The problem is they're in 30 or 40 different ordinances. That is something we're going to look at, whether or not we want to try to bring those in under one ordinance. That's a very cumbersome endeavor in itself, and that may take us some time. I think we would just like to get something up and running as soon as possible, because we're losing revenue. Because if it's an ordinance violation, that money goes back to the city. So.
And I'd like to make one comment. Prior to Mr. Merkley being the city attorney, we went through our list, and there was around 500, 550 ordinance violations that nothing was ever done on. Mr. Merkley, since he's been city attorney, has been taking care of those cases, and a lot of them don't even go into the court system. But there's a lot of money that's been lost due to this not being done properly.
Yes, sir. Les, it sounds to me like there's going to be a lot of extra work once we start processing this internally with your office and the clerk's office. Has there been discussion yet? I would assume you would be asking for more employees.
My office will not.
Okay. Okay.
It's basically the same work. I mean, I'm prosecuting the same as I was before.
And basically what we want to do is, as we started off, I have 2 employees counting myself at the present time. And one of those employees would be working out with the Ordinance Violation Bureau. But the thing is, too, when you have 2 employees, whether you have an Ordinance Violation Bureau or not, at some point in time, if I get sick and somebody else gets sick, what are you going to do?
I guess my question kind of goes back to, I want to make sure that we understand what the cost of setting this up is, the expense side of it, and then, when we had the court, one of the reasons, there's maybe multiple reasons we closed the court, but one of the reasons was we said it wasn't covering itself. It was costing the city money. And I would not want to be in favor of something that we implement and set up that costs us more in employees and benefits than it does on what we bring in the fines. 'Cause then we've replaced one system that wasn't working with another one that's costing the city. And I have no idea what the revenues would be. I have no idea that's why I asked how many employees are we talking. And
Well, one thing I'd like to say is we have lost, wouldn't you estimate, a couple $1 million over the non-collection of these ordinances violations. 2 weeks ago, we had, when the court closed, Ms. Kaiser and myself worked with Judge Weber. There was over, I couldn't even tell you how many we did. We went from 1987 to 2015 outstanding warrants. Those were outstanding warrants. We went through 8 file drawers full of outstanding warrants. So I guess what the point is, there is money there to be collected, but you can't collect it when you don't have anybody collecting it.
I get it.
And we went through the breakdown. And one of the things is with the ordinance violations, a lot of that money goes to the law enforcement, your fund for the law enforcement,
I was just approached by both Animal Control and the Police Department, and they're saying, what do we do? And that's, well, right now you can't issue any ordinance violations until we figure out, a system in place that we can process those and adjudicate those, so.
What's that average out a year? You said 2 million, but how, does that go back to 87?
Those were warrants, outstanding warrants.
From 87
yes,
to
and
now.
I could go back and tell you how many. There was 663 ordinance violations total. And a lot of them Mr. Merkley had taken care of, but some of those even go way back. Back we had one from 1987 that is still on the books that nothing was ever done with.
If you had to guess, how many a year is that?
Yeah, what do you
You know, I mean, that's what we're going to try to work out the math here. If it's so many a year, it's such a cost per violation per year, we then have a rough idea of
Well,
what that's bringing in.
for instance, I think the average, if I could be wrong, but the average one that maybe not a speeding, but I guess speeding. in a way.
A majority of them are speeding.
Yeah, or a minimum, what, $125?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's, I don't know how many tickets they have.
In fact, I think it's a little bit more than that because we have a deferral program and the price for the deferral is almost the same as the ticket. So again, I'm just asking for first reading so we can.
Any idea of how many last year were, how many were issued? Like that, I mean, we can't, we only have one digit of the equation. We would need to know the other, how many, to have any clue to what this equals.
Well, that number could be skewed if say the speeding tickets, if you were citing them on Indiana code and not ordinance because you knew there was no enforcement on the ordinance, you wouldn't be doing that. So the number could be, you don't know what the thought process was on if you issued an ordinance or a state code, and that depends on where the money goes.
And the other thing that,
Is that right?
in that,
Yes.
Scott, is...
Right now they're issuing state.
Because
Yes.
there's no ordinance.
Because there's no ordinance.
Of the office.
Yes.
But we get none of that money. And I think Mr. Hawkins makes a good point. I think that's probably one reason why I'm saying, let's just do first reading and let's figure out exactly. I don't think you'd want to look at last year because I think once the decision was made to abolish the court, they started, I think, not issuing nearly as many under local ordinance. I would look at probably the 2 or 3 years prior to that and see, exactly how many have been issued and how much have been collected. I mean, those numbers should be fairly easy to ascertain.
The other part of that formula, and Vicki, the clerk, mentioned it, is that when the police write it, a portion of that goes to their education fund or whatever fund it's set up to go into. So that those dollars wouldn't come back to offset the cost of the staff. When the animal control people write it, they want some of that to come back to help fund their department, which I understand that. But then again, I just think we just need to look at the cost and what it's going to be, and so we know.
The clerk gets 3% of everything that's processed, 3%. And I never took it during the time with the court, even though both myself and finance could have taken that money, we never took it.
And I'm assuming that if we do this and set it up, we could say the clerks, or if it's her office that has the manpower, gets 35% or whatever.
No, it's statute.
Well,
we can set it what we want, should we not?
Well, there's going to be certain portions, there's certain portions of the fine have to go to certain funds. But I think what you need to look at is what portion of that fine is going into the general fund. And I don't know the answer to that, but I think it should be fairly easy to ascertain as to how much was collected as a result of local ordinance violations that went into the general fund. Scott was judge at one time, but I have no idea what that number is. I know there are a lot of ordinance violations. Again, 90% of them never make it to my desk because people just pay the ticket and move on. But there's those 10% of people who want to argue their constitutional rights, and either at a city council meeting or in my office. So,
Is there anything further? Is there a motion to pass on the first reading?
I'll make a motion to pass on the first reading. Second.
Motion and a second to pass 2016 OR 6 on the first reading. Anything further?
it may be, obviously it's a policy decision for you. You all may decide that you don't want to pursue this at all, and we just have them continue to pay or write state ordinances. So,
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Ms. Metcalf. This is a public hearing and ordinance of additional appropriation.
This is the first reading.
This is the first reading?
Public hearing's going to be on the 1st of February.
Okay. I thought we were scheduled today. My mistake.
Okay. The majority, or I should say all of them except for the very last one, has to do with the salary ordinance change that you made for the elected officials. And then the very last one is the addition that we need because the amount budgeted for 911 was short this amount from the actual cost that is going to be for this year. So the total for this year is $908,320.99.
Got a question. When I saw this where it says we have to do an additional appropriation to Lloyd, well, Lloyd was established so we could pay for the 911. So why in the world do we have to do additional appropriation for a fund that this was, actually that's what that fund is for. Now, if it affects the budgets of either the police or fire, then I can see, well, we might have to do additional appropriation down because there wasn't that Lloyd money there, but I don't understand why we have to do an additional appropriation for Lloyd money.
We did budget our Lloyd money. We split police and fire with the same amount of money each, and then we budgeted our money for our share of 911. Unfortunately, our share of 911 turned out to be more than what we anticipated. So thankfully we have that operating balance, and we've got to appropriate that extra $81,000, almost $82,000. Because the fiscal board of the consolidated 911 is allowed to increase their budget up to 3% every year per the interlocal agreement. And I think at first they had a budget that was a little shorter than what it turned out to be, but they took that full 3%, which reflects the increase that we see. Am I off?
Oh, I understand that, but my question is, why in the world are we doing additional appropriation for a fund that fund is supposed to pay for our 911? If we have to do down the road additional appropriation for one of the, I understand that the Lloyd, we set aside money for the police and fire's budget, and I do not want to take away from that, but the purpose of Lloyd is for 911. Am I not correct on that?
It's for public safety.
In addition, not just all.
So, but there's money in Lloyd, but we have to do an additional appropriation to Lloyd to pay for this. Because the way it's
This dollar amount was not budgeted.
Okay.
911, because Lloyd is public safety, we use fire, police, other things in addition to 911. So if this was not in the budget specifically for 911, that's
We have to
why
designate that.
Yeah, the LGF rules.
Okay. I'd ask, because obviously.
Motion to approve 2016 OR7 on the first reading.
There's a motion and a second to pass 2016 OR7.
This was public.
No.
hearing, right?
No.
No, we were told it was going to be a public hearing.
Okay, I'm sorry,
But
I'm
we looked, and the public hearing
Yes.
isn't until the 1st.
Public hearing will be on the
Yeah.
first.
The advertisement is for the public hearing on the 1st.
Right. So there's a motion and a second. Anything further? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Council attorney report.
Nothing for tonight.
Is there a department head that would like to speak? Are you sure? Okay. Public comment. We do have one more person on public comment, but I don't see Mr. Smith. Did he leave?
No, he's here.
Oh, there you are. You
Just
moved.
switch seats.
Mr. Smith, would you like to speak on your other subject that you signed up for?
I'll take 1 minute.
Now, Mr. Smith, I'll say that typically when you sign up, you get one chunk of 3 minutes, and
I appreciate what you're doing here, so I'll make it short.
okay.
Before you all pass that animal ordinance, I have acquaintances. I've been a former Jack Russell breeder, and I've had dogs for 71 years. I know something about raising dogs and taking care of them. I'm probably the best in Clark County. But anyway, I have had access to 350 years of experience among 5 people. And I think before you pass that ordinance, we need at least me with those people trying to work out something that makes sense so people don't get overly penalized. So with that, I hope that if you have a committee or something, that I become part of that, and I'll try to make sense out of something that could be real unjust for most people. There's a lot more involved in that animal ordinance than I think the three people that are going to be involved in it really understand. So keep me in mind if you would. I'm doing this for the dogs.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Smith? Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Smith, are you talking about the ordinance violation bureau?
No. There's going to be an ordinance on the next month's, or next council meeting that we're not even seen yet. It's the one about the animals that Sarah, that Jonna asked to put on the February 1st meeting.
About the cold?
Yeah.
I haven't seen that. No idea. He's on top of it.
Good question.
It hasn't even been written yet. I don't know.
Well, now we know ahead of time.
He's insightful. Yes, sir.
I'll make it quick, can I?
Come ahead.
I promise I'll make it very quick.
Only because we did it earlier. I'll let somebody else.
Well, I apologize. I came in late because my son had a basketball game. Bob Woosley, Heritage Engineering, 603 North Shore Drive, Unit 204. I can promise you I'm not a lobbyist. I'm not a millionaire. But what I am is a small business owner here in your city. My wife's worked in your city for over 20 years. I've had my business here for well over 10 years. Very proud of that. Have 14 professional positions. I'm a little disappointed that you put all developers in one basket. That's not fair. It's like putting all attorneys in one basket. You'd be offended with that. Yes, you would. Yes, you would. You would be offended with that. I know you would. But you're getting the type of developers you now want. Mr. Nickley's is a top-notch developer. He and others that are looking in Jeffersonville now are top-notch developers. That's what we want. That's the type of business we want to attract. The moratorium's not sending a good message. Now, that's my line of business. So, yeah, it affects me. It affects people who own property. But you already have rules in place. So I encourage you to reconsider that. At the end of 6 months, then what? You're going to tell certain people that you own a piece of property, you're not going to put it on overlay to business, but you own one, I'll let you put one there. I don't know that at the end of 6 months, it's not going to magically just start allowing them again. That's not what I'm hearing you want. But what I did want to stress is that you do have us to have a vested interest in the area. I'd hate for us to drive off business because you now have those types of people coming to the table. And they don't just come overnight. In Mr. Nickley's case, he's been working on this for, I know personally, at least 2 years, just looking at the property, looking for the right opportunity, looking for the areas. You've got others doing that because we work with many. I just don't want to see that hampered in any way because you have a lot of positive momentum. There are a lot of great things going on. And I agree, 10th Street needs to be looked at, but it's just my 2 cents worth. So I appreciate you hearing me. I said I'd keep it short, and I will. I know you've had a long night.
Mr. Woosley, what was your address on North Shore?
603 North Shore Drive.
Suite 204?
Suite 204, yes.
That's all for public comment. Move to council comments. Mr. White? Really? We've covered it all? Ms. Yan?
Yeah, I wanted to readdress that drainage board appointment.
Oh, that's right. Go ahead.
Do I need to make a motion?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to nominate Charlie Smith to the drainage board. Second.
The motion and a second for Charlie Smith to be on the drainage board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes.
And the only other thing is I wanted to just bring some feedback from the IACT conference that we had last week. I know several of us were able to attend in Indianapolis and bring back a lot of new knowledge and also networking with other locally elected officials across the state. I believe Steve Webb, Scott Hawkins, Scotty, myself, and Dustin were all up there. So it was a great experience. My 3 minutes is up.
No, sorry.
But that's all I wanted to say.
Mr. Maples? Comment. Ms. Gill?
I did want to say, because you all know I go to the drainage board meetings, and you all made excellent appointments, and I can't thank you all enough. I did want to let everyone know that the president of Drainage Board is now Bob Rogie, and the vice is Steve Gill. So I just want to let everybody know that.
Any relation?
Yeah. But you'll be happy to know that they're really diving in, and you're going to see, I'm really excited. We're going to see a lot of drainage issues solved, and I'm excited about that. So that's all I have.
Mr. Hawkins.
I think I used up all my time earlier. No comment.
Mr. Webb. Mr. Samuel.
Just two things. I would ask that, Matt, if you would, as president, you invite Rob Ways, our redevelopment director, or his designee. It doesn't have to be Rob, but to come and present to us and talk to us at a workshop about the downtown properties that the redevelopment in the city owns, any that's contiguous and any that's not contiguous, and let us know which ones have been tied up or contracted and which ones are available. Because it was mentioned earlier about Colston Park, and one of the discussions I had with the mayor was before we turn over Colston Park and for just whatever use, let's look at doing one more request for proposals with all our contiguous properties and shop that for at least 90 days nationwide, because we're getting so much national attention, if not international attention, as we heard from One Southern Indiana tonight. And the mayor indicated, well, there may not be as much property down there as we think. So he's aware that I've made this request, but I'd ask you to make that formally so we can figure out how we're going to move forward, and then that'll address Colston Park sooner, I think, than later. And the second thing is I just want to thank Vicki, our clerk, for helping with the overhead projector tonight. When people come with charts and everything else, it's not your job to have to go do that, but I appreciate you.
That's no problem.
You doing that. That's all I have.
Only comment I have is I'd like to see us invest in a new one, because that one is broken.
One of the lights is out in it or something, isn't it? Has come
It's
off.
a mess.
Yeah. I had several things, so bear with me. Some of these are minuscule, and I'll skip over them. We are going to have a salary ordinance workshop on February the 1st at 5:30. I've checked with Kim and Heather, and I believe everybody is on board with that. We're going to be reviewing the ordinance as a whole, making sure everybody understands how the ordinance works, understands the impact the ordinance has when we make changes. And then we're also going to be discussing some requests from various departments for either changes to the ordinance or additions to the ordinance. So that's coming up on February the 1st at 5:30. It'll be right here. Also, both the police chief and the fire chief have asked for a workshop in respect to LOIT and the LOIT funding. Their budgets were done a little bit different for 2016 than they had in the past, and they have some questions on the amount that they've been funded and how their funding has been structured. So I don't know, I don't have a date for that yet. If it's something we can schedule now, that would be great. I'm sure the chiefs are anxious to speak with us, and I'm sure they could probably accommodate a date that we would come up with. I threw out the 8th at one point in an email, and I know there was at least one or two people that could not do the 8th. The 15th is before our next council meeting. I'm sorry, not our next, but the following after the 1st. If there's no conflict with the 15th, maybe we could schedule for that.
How long do we think we need to plan for that?
At least an hour, maybe 5:30 again. I would hate to cut ourselves short. There's two departments, a lot of needs, and from both, and a lot of questions and concerns from both.
I can do that. The 15th?
15th at 5:30. The 15th is President's Day. That's not a city holiday, is it?
Just asking Les, I'm not sure.
I don't believe it is.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure it's not. Okay. Thank you, Kim.
Okay, that's fine with me.
So I'll put that down 15th at 5:30. So that everyone is aware, I know some of you have met James Zellman with Honeywell. Some of you have not, but you've heard of kind of the projects that he had brought forth last year. He has asked to sit down again. I'm going to meet with him at 1:30 on Wednesday at the Hub, which is the coffee shop across the street. Anybody and everybody is welcome to join, as long as it's not more than 5 of us, so please contain your excitement and check with everyone else. But you are all welcome. We need to vote on the Steamboat Committee members. We discussed in the Parks Board that we have not appointed our members to the Steamboat Days Committee as a council. So I think current members are Lisa Gill and Connie Sellers. I don't know if anybody else is dying to get on the Steamboat Days Committee. We can discuss it.
We meet on Wednesdays at Wednesdays at 10:30.
Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Wednesdays at 10:30, at least monthly. When it gets closer, it's every other week, and then when it gets down to it, it's every week.
Come on, bro.
If not more. So, unless anybody speaks up, is there a motion for Connie and Lisa to stay on that?
I make a motion that Connie and Lisa stay on.
Connie wants to stay, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I second.
So motion and second for Connie Sellers and Lisa Gill to the Steamboat Days Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Awesome. Redevelopment. Rob Ways has invited the council members to the redevelopment meeting on Wednesday. Sent that out in an email. They meet at 6 o'clock upstairs. There's going to be a presentation by somebody, a group that wants to come to one of the downtown properties. And he would be anxious for you to hear their presentation along with the redevelopment board, if you can make it.
What time did you say that was, man?
That's at 6 o'clock on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
Yes. And then we're all invited to a celebration at McDonald's on 62. I'll have you know that McDonald's is going to open, I think, the 26th or 27th. They put a sign up. They're building their building. They put a sign up that didn't follow the zoning code. Because we changed the code last year after we implemented a moratorium on all signs, and they've taken it down. I mean, if McDonald's will listen, anybody can listen. I mean, so Mr. Pruitt was quick to get on that. Somebody stole it. Lastly, and then we will go, if I can find it. We had several members from Jeffersonville participate with the Department of Homeland Security. It's a task force that we participate in, go up to Du Bois County to help manage a public health crisis that they're having up there. It's when you get into the details, it sounds kind of silly, but it is a public health crisis. The Department of Homeland Security, federally and stateside, are involved in that, and they went up for a couple of days to help manage that because they have the knowledge and the know-how to manage those incidents. And that's through the District 9 task force that our guys are a part of. And that was where firefighter Justin Ames, Travis Sharp, and Eric Hedrick, and then our safety director, or coordinator, Amir Musavi, safety manager, excuse me. Thank you, Kim. Amir Musavi, all participated in those exercises or those tasks of managing that incident up in Du Bois County. So that will all be reimbursed. Those expenses will be reimbursed by the state. And it's good to know that we have people who can step up in a crisis to manage, people and resources. If we ever were to have a crisis like that here, those people are here. So if there's nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned. 2 hours and 17 minutes later.